board meeting, and we'll reconvene the Special Board of Education open session at 7:02. We're all here, and prior to this, we did have a closed session. We took no reportable action. Up first, we have our Pledge of Allegiance, and Mr. Gillen, will you please lead us in the pledge?
Certainly, please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated.
Ms. Huff, do we have any public comments for any items on the Special Board of Education meeting tonight?
Yes, Board President Hammond. Okay, our first public comment comes from Ms. Sarah Villalobos. Ms. Villalobos writes, "Hello there. I have 2 elementary age students at Mayflower. I watched the board meeting yesterday and had a comment. When they're in the classroom, it's the teacher's world and they can run their classroom how they choose. The classroom is now my house, and it would help greatly if they could coordinate the blocks across classes so that my kids are learning and breaking at mostly the same time. Springtime was a crush to figure out distance learning, and I understand that that was difficult for everyone. We had 2 very different class structures / homework levels between the teachers, and it caused major problems between my kids. Actually, way more for my younger child than my older one. There were lots of videos too, which is certainly less dynamic than instructor-led. I'm hoping that this is more uniform across the classes, so as a working mom, I can have a set schedule. One more thing, presuming we will move to a hybrid at some point in time, if requests that siblings be put in the same cohorts so that they will go to school and stay home on the same days. Thank you, Sarah Villalobos."
Thanks, Ms. Villalobos.
The next public comment comes from Brian Lickman. Mr. Lickman writes, "Dear Monrovia School Board members and members of administration, following postings on Facebook with Brian Long from the Monrovia School Board, I have many concerns over the way our school board is attempting to establish a remote learning plan. First, I'd like to start off by saying that I'm extremely disappointed in not only Monrovia USD, but many other districts. The start of this school year was no surprise months ago when we first were forced into quarantine. Of course, we all hoped that things would improve, but regardless, there should have been plans made for multiple options to return to school to prepare. The 3 main courses of action to take were going to be full remote, hybrid, or full in-classroom learning. Now here we are, close to school starting, and details are still being discussed, with a mostly wasted summer. The hybrid approach which was worked on can hopefully be utilized when we are prepared to start the transition. But even with that, there were many open questions. I now have been left with little time to coordinate care for my kids during the day and still don't have a schedule to use. As I explained below, there is no option with the proposed schedule that will work for many families, including mine. According to Brian Long's reply on Facebook, the board created a subcommittee that they thought was representative of the community. This committee included 4 teachers, 4 parents, and 4 administrators to hash out a last-minute plan. I have serious doubts about representation in this group based on the output and schedules which were posted to the public. There should have been representatives of teachers across more grade levels, such that they could have input in how their students would be able to handle a distance learning plan. This does not seem doable with only 4 teachers. Additionally, how diverse were the parent representatives? Were any of these full-time working parents who will be simultaneously working while assisting and supervising their child during the all-day schedule that you have proposed? Did these parent representatives include parents who had students at a variety of age levels, including kinder, who will not be able to work independently? Next, I don't understand why a schedule was posted on Facebook without any explanation or caveats. I completely appreciate as a parent having some information as the process progresses. However, to be blunt, I feel that the board, with this schedule and the process conducted, is failing my family. By other concerned parent responses, conversations, and posts, I am confident that I am not the only one. I completely understand that the state is directing the number of minutes required per grade level. Kindergarten students are required to have 180 minutes of instructional time. First through third grades require 230 minutes, 50 minutes more than kindergarten. I don't understand why MUSD has decided that kindergarten students should not have their own schedule and instead should be grouped with older students who have already been exposed to formal schooling. My point being that all of the years to push our younger students to do more, this is not the year. These kindergartners have never stepped foot into a classroom and are expected to sit at a computer for multiple long periods of time, mimicking a classroom environment. Your Monrovia kindergartens deserve to have their own shorter schedule, which reflects the required minutes from the state. In addition, the number of instructional blocks and how they stretch across the entire day is too many for you to say that you are taking into account working parent schedules. I, as a working parent, cannot accommodate my child attending class all day long on your schedule. Your proposed schedule is a very fixed, long schedule with little flexibility, which makes it arduous, if not impossible, for working parents to support. I don't think it's feasible to expect parents and students to commit to 3 fixed sessions and 1 independent session that encompasses a full day. The attempt to mimic a normal academic school day cannot and should not be required when not in a physical classroom. I understand this is a very complex problem to solve, and that in any approach there will be complaints, which is why I won't write this without offering a solution. Have you considered hosting sessions that students could choose which session they can adequately attend depending upon their parents' or guardian's schedule? One approach would be to implement a morning and afternoon session, one of which would be mandatory attendance, while during the rest of the educational time, other assignments are video recorded, work is assigned online, and a teacher could host office hours or small groups. Another approach is to look at other districts, such as Glendora's proposed schedule. They take into account that their students should not be sitting on a computer for 6 hours every day and have all instructional blocks for primary grades finished by lunch, so that students can work independently or attend office hours after lunch. Even this is not very flexible, but it is at least shorter, instead utilizing independent work and check-ins. Now is the time for our district to think flexibly, as the majority of parents work during normal school hours, and we will need to support our kids' education dynamically from jobs that are more fixed. While I don't expect the district to figure out childcare during the day, I do expect them to take into account work schedules such that parents aren't choosing between their kids' education and working to support their family. If the posted all-day sample schedule is the route you're headed, then I, amongst other parents, will be forced to disenroll and instead choose a homeschool approach in order to allow my kid a reasonable and fair education and also still work to support my family. I am confident that these are not the actions that you want people to take. I sincerely hope you will adjust your schedules such that we can not only start the school year off well, but be an example of how to approach a complex problem correctly, so that parents can choose our district over the other options that are out there. I thank you for your time. Sincerely, Brian Lickman.
Thank you, Mr. Lickman.
And the last public comment comes from Jill Alonzo. Ms. Alonzo writes, we have 2 children, but also 2 full-time working parents who can work outside of the house. I can't guarantee my children can log in every day to distance learning. Would it be possible to do 2 days of learning in 1 day? Can the teachers record their lectures, and can that count as attendance? And that is from Ms. Alonso.
That was the total letter?
That is the total comment.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Alonso. If I may, I'd like to ask Dr. Tarosian to please respond to, or have the appropriate staff member respond to these parents. There were a number of concerns there, and it will need a response. I'm hoping that we have telephone numbers for these folks, Ms. Huff?
If not telephone numbers, at least we have their email address. To get
Okay, so we'll make contact.
Mr. President, can I ask a question?
Mr. President, sure.
You are. In Kathy's response to these parents, can there be an update, can there be a public update from Dr. Tarosian about Mountain Park?
We can have a Mountain Park update all the time. Kathy could talk about Mountain Park in about a minute from now.
Can I request that? Can I request that?
I think Kathy probably already heard you. In about a minute, we're going to have a learning update. I'm sure there might be a Mountain Park option in there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. But the main thing is, because the last thing we as the board want is to let people not think that we didn't hear them. So we need to contact folks that are getting in contact with us. And Ms. Huff, that's all the public comments we have?
Yes, that is it.
Okay, thank you. And if there are no more, then we will close that portion and move on to the information reports in Dr. Tarosian.
Thank you, President Hammond, members of the board, and public. We have an update today about the various options and subcommittees that have been working diligently since, since May, trying to craft several models for our students. We had some guiding principles listed here in front of you, and really what I want to call attention to is that final one of we want to make sure to offer flexibility and grace at all times. And that's for our staff members, for our students, for one another. These are stressful times, and we know that everybody is working to the best of their ability, and we simply want to pause during stress and take a moment before moving on and listen and respond with a little bit of grace. Next slide, please. I will ask our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, Dr. Sue Kaiser, these are on each of the slides with each of the subcommittees are listed the number of individuals, the number of, not the number of meetings they've had, but simply their purpose and their continued progress. We won't be reading each one of these slides. What we have is up here just for your information, and if there's any new information, the person speaking will provide that to you. The second thing we'd like to do with this week's update, first I want to thank you for these weekly meetings because it gives us an opportunity to get some action items in place. And this week, we realized that each of the action items is essentially corresponded to the subcommittee work. And we thought we would call attention to it and explain it within the context of the update in order to clarify its purpose, so that when we get to the action items, there is a better understanding of the purpose of each of these action items. So we'll fold all of the information in as we present, but we won't be reading each of these slides. We'll simply have it up as a reminder to everybody of what exists and what they're tasked with.
Dr. Tarosian,
With that,
you're not
yes.
reading each of these, but can parents find this information if they're not on this meeting right now, can they find this information somewhere?
We will post it to our link with the COVID-19 information.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And with that, Dr. Kaiser.
Good evening, Board President Hammond, Board Superintendent, and members of the community, and my fellow cabinet members. I'm happy to report out the work of the elementary scheduling and the elementary task force over the past week or two. Our scheduling task force has been working diligently on making sense out of the governor's recommendation, the guidance from the county regarding schedules, the needs that were expressed in the spring when we had our shutdown and we had our moments of distance learning during that time. And one of the outcries was for some regularity in the education and some similarity in what students are doing that is standards based and that will lead our students to achievement. And so with that in mind, our task force has been comprised of parents, teachers, support staff, and administrators. And we have come together to talk about what does it look like in real time when a teacher is teaching online and conducting class. It's not exactly like it is inside a classroom, but there are activities that are large group, small group, and independent in nature. And what does that look like? Tonight, I have invited Mrs. Caroline Badalian to assist me in talking a little bit about what a schedule would look like in kindergarten in real time. What does, we see numbers on a page that represent times. What does it look like when a kindergarten teacher is narrating what that time actually looks like, and somebody who has taught according to a schedule in her classroom in the spring. And so we will be going through that a little bit. Are there any questions about this slide before I move on to the next slide?
Actually, Dr. Kaiser, did you want to discuss that last bullet, or would you like to do that later?
Yes, in terms of elementary student and family engagement, the first 8 days of school, we are going to be releasing the students at 11:30. And the purpose for that is so that the teachers can get some of the one-on-one assessment done, so that teachers have time to reach out to families, to have office hours, and to troubleshoot anything that might be indicative of a start that is less than smooth, because we're anticipating that for the most part, families are going to be fine, but there's always a glitch that could happen. And when we say that we want to educate everybody at the highest level that we possibly can, all means all. And so this is going to give our staff, our teachers, our system some time to reach out to people that have some needs, so that we can get everybody onboarded. And also so that teachers have a little bit of time to get to know their students one-on-one after the instructional time in the morning, so that afternoon time after lunch, they'll be able to do that reach out. Especially important for kindergarten and TK students, that teachers are able to do a little bit of one-on-one assessing to know where to start their instruction with the students. And that would include first grade too, because they need to respond one-on-one. And so those screenings will be in place so that we have baseline. So for that first 8 days, children will be released at 11:30. And we do have enough instructional minutes built into our schedules that this will not pose a problem in terms of meeting our mandate by the end of the year. Okay, next slide. And I'd like Caroline to come on, and I'll talk through the slide and then have Caroline talk about what it looks like when a teacher is actually doing the teaching. And so this slide is there's a little bit of difference between this slide and the one that we shared last week. We are staying with the same framework. And our framework for students is beginning the day at 8:30 with a whole class check-in and some social emotional learning, the morning message, finding out, who's here today and how are they doing. And so that is the whole class activities. We will have some curriculum for teachers to support them so that they have a robust well to draw from in terms of teaching those activities and drawing kids in. From 9 to 9:50 will be a period of either ELA or math with teachers doing whole class, small group, and one-on-one.
I'm sorry, Sue. We need to not use the acronyms. Could you just use the big word?
Certainly, the English language arts block or math, it will depend on how the school sets that up. That will occur during this time. And then there will be a digital break or a home recess for students to go have free time. Then they're back with their teacher at 10:15 to 11:30 for more whole group, small group, one-on-one, and classwork. And then they have 1 hour break for lunch, and then they come back for a 45-minute period. And you'll notice that then there's an independent learning time, and the times are listed in the bottom box. In the independent learning time, this is where students will be able to do art, music, PE, and their reflex math, which is a very automatic program that students use to gain automaticity in their math facts. And that independent learning time can be done anytime in the afternoon or the evening. So there's great flexibility in that time. On Fridays, the teaching day will end at 11:30, and there will be some more activities in the independent learning time for children to do to extend their interest areas and to give some extension activities. Or if students have work from the week that they need to work on, there will be time for them to do that. Now I'd like to pause and
I have a question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Celine.
So this has changed from a shorter Monday schedule to a shorter Friday schedule. Am I correct?
It was never determined to be a short Monday schedule. In fact, none of the times for children learning are shorter. The learning times are the same, and they need to be outlined the same daily, or we will not make our instructional minutes in the week. And so the times are the same. They will have a longer independent learning time on a Friday.
Thank you.
Will the student have access to help until 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yes, they will. There will be scheduled office hours. Teachers work until 3:15. And so there will be scheduled office hours. And then always for working parents, our teachers are very good about returning calls when parents are available. And so there will be scheduled time when people can reach out to their teacher during office hours or emailing throughout the week. And teachers are available every day, including Friday, until 3:15. They may be in a meeting, or they may have some things that they're doing, but in that afternoon time, they certainly will be reachable. The other time that teachers are reachable is there's an 8 o'clock to 8:30 time that teachers are on the clock. And that's also a time when they can return phone calls, return email, and work with the families.
And Sue, before we head on to the next part, will you please explain social emotional learning?
Yes. Social emotional learning, what we're finding is that with students that are learning at home, there's a great concern that they're not connected to the teacher or to each other. And so this is a time when the teacher will be able to teach social skills, skills that are online, do the check-in, how are they feeling today? There's a plethora of songs for young students that draw them in and that create that social sense. There are social games that are in the curriculum that students will be able to play with their teacher that are online. So those are the types of things. So within that first 30 minutes, they will have time for their morning meeting, roll call, and then also some social interplay with one another. We had summer school this summer for 4 weeks, and it was a great time to try out some of these strategies because the children that came to summer school did not necessarily know one another, and they didn't necessarily know the teacher that they were assigned to. So it was very similar to what is going to happen beginning August 19th. Children will be assigned to a class where they don't necessarily know their teacher or each other. And within 4 weeks, these students in summer school connected with their teachers. They not only connected with their teachers, but they had a very large margin of growth in the summer school programs. So we know from that children can connect and that they can grow, but they need to have that first margin of time to make the connection so that they're comfortable, so that the learning is fun, and so that when they're in and out of the classroom, because they'll be in for the whole group and then they'll be out for the independent activity, that they're drawn back to want to be there with their peers and with their teacher. So that's what the social emotional learning is.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. I'd like to invite Caroline now to walk us through what this might look like for a kindergartner, because when you look at this and you hear me talking, it sounds like children are going to be sitting in front of the computer like we are right now. And I'd like Caroline to explain what it might look like with somebody who's in kindergarten. Caroline?
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me.
We hear you. We don't see you yet.
Okay. I'm not able to start the video. I don't know.
Oh, there you are.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi. Okay. So the thing to keep in mind here is definitely flexibility. Each teacher is definitely going to have their own style with how they start their day, but especially for the young ones, for kindergartners, when we start off our day, those first 30 minutes are going to be very engaging. It's our welcome time. It's a time for the kids to see each other's faces. And it's really a time that's active. So we're not just sitting. We sing, there's a welcome song, we do our calendar together. So there's a lot of response from the students. They're not just sitting and watching me. So that's definitely, I feel like when you see 30 minutes, it seems a lot more than it is, because for the kids, this is one of their favorite times of the day, and it's our favorite time of the day too. So that's a really interactive, critical part of the day where they are getting that social, emotional learning happening because they're seeing their friends and they're allowed to participate with the teacher. And we get up, we dance, we stretch. And then for the remainder of that time, the 9 to 9:50, the way that works is we are going to have that really critical core content that's important for the students to learn. So part of that will definitely need to be whole group, but that's also interactive, because when we're teaching that, the students, again, are not just sitting there. They are going to be asked to interact with us by writing on their whiteboards, holding things up to show. And part of that is actually fun because we like to include scavenger hunts where the kids get up and they look for things in the classroom that pertain to our core content. So for kindergarten, it's definitely, I want to put the parents at ease to let them know that it's not just going to be this rigorous staring at a screen all for that long chunk of time, those 80 minutes. And then, of course, part of that will also be broken into small group sessions. So when the whole group core content has been taught, then some students will break to go do independent work that has been pre-planned to align with the core content, while we get that critical time with the small group to reinforce the skills that we taught in a smaller setting. And especially in this distance learning model, it's going to be really critical for us to have that small group time to get to know the students on a closer, deeper level, and to be able to do those formative assessments to see where they're at, how much they're engaged, how much they're learning. So it's very interactive and it's very important. So when they break, that's their free time to just break and have their snack. And, we could even talk about snack time before they break and see you when you come back. They're going to want to come back because it's going to feel like they're at school. That's our goal. Our goal is to make them feel like they're there. And it's just a little snack break. We're all going to go have our snack. And when we come back, we're going to, again, teach that important content, that math content, again, in a whole group setting. Again, very interactive. We have manipulatives planned that we're sending home that kids will be able to use and respond to the learning, not just sit and watch, but they're going to have their dice and their manipulatives, their 10 frames to build and really work with us in a procedural manner, but also to learn conceptually on both levels for math. And that's really important that we get that separate math time to do those things with them. And again, they will break for small groups. So it isn't going to be that huge chunk of time where they're sitting in front of the screen. Part of it will be whole group. And then small group will possibly be on a rotating basis where there are certain days where they have their time to have their small group. And of course, this is flexible depending on how things go, depending on our small group sizes, all of those things we're going to have to adapt according to our students' needs, and each school site will have to adapt according to their needs for that. And then the last chunk of time, that 12:30 to 1:15 time, that 30-minute really of learning, that whole group time will be really critical for that social emotional learning, that closure at the end of the day. So we could incorporate some writing, but we're also going to make it a nice tie-in to the end of the day. Again, possibly with song, possibly with some Go Noodle, where they're up and dancing a little bit with us, or doing another little scavenger hunt type of activity where they're looking forward to coming back. And we're looking forward to it too, because it's a nice way to tie in what they've learned and have a nice little closure to the end of the day. And if need be, again, small group sessions that we need to do for the areas that we didn't cover in the morning.
Okay, are there any questions for Caroline?
I just have one question. How did it go for you in the summer?
Do you mean in the spring before we
Right, I'm sorry, in the spring, yes.
It was so new. So I think we were still getting a feel for what it was going to look like. But with each day and each week that progressed, I think we learned to fine tune things a little more. And going into it now, I think we feel a little more prepared because we know what the kids need more. I think in the beginning it was new for everyone. So it was definitely a time of learning for all of us. But I think it really helped us prepare for what is coming now.
And to follow up on that,
yeah,
the difference between the spring and the fall. The spring, you had a lot of months and you already knew the students. You knew the particulars of that student. We're going in fresh now, and the student you don't know the student, and the student doesn't know you. Will you explain what you do as a teacher to our parents? How will you engage them so that I know the social emotional part, but what do you do as a teacher to connect with that student and for them to connect back with you?
I'm glad you asked that question because it's probably the most important question, especially for kindergarten teachers, because a lot of these students have never been in a classroom setting before and they don't know what to expect. So that is the most important thing for us, is to get to know these kids and to create a sense of trust so that they want to listen and so that they're ready to learn. So for us, it's going to be, I feel like, that small group time. And even prior to our full schedule, those shortened days where we have time to assess one-on-one and get to connect with the families and the students one-on-one, I feel is really critical. It's really important to make that connection ahead of time and to let them get to know us a little bit. And we're definitely going to be doing a lot of that when we have our morning sessions as well. It's a time where we're going to get familiar with one another. It's our biggest task. It's the most important thing. It's kind of the foundation. If you don't have that sense of relationship and trust, then it's going to be really hard to captivate their attention through a screen. So that's our number one goal. That is the most important thing. And we're working on that right now. We're trying to come up with creative ways to engage our students and want them to share with us. We're going to be sharing a lot of our personal life with them to get them connected. And so we're working on that. It's definitely a process, but it's the most important thing, I think, because there won't be any learning if we don't have that relationship to start with.
I would like to thank you for coming. And I think this is very important. You're not on the clock yet. You're still on summer break. And you're here taking and giving your time to give us your perspective from the classroom. And I deeply appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's my pleasure. I want to help in any way that I can and just let everyone know that we are working, we love what we do. And Monrovia is such an amazing district with fabulous administrators and teachers. And I mean, if you could just see what's going on behind the scenes and how much heart is being put into this and how much we really want to make this work for everyone. And I think the most important thing, and Dr. Tarosian mentioned it right from the start, is grace. You know, we really need to give each other grace because it's a learning process for everyone. I know the schedule may seem daunting at first for parents, teachers, and students. I mean, this is a lot. So we teachers, you know, we're going to be flexible and we're going to offer grace where it's needed, and we're going to hopefully get that grace back, you know, when it comes to the way we're planning things out and assessing things. So it's really a team effort, and I'm glad to help in any way that I can.
Thank you.
I have a question. You just mentioned a team effort, and I so appreciate the work that you're doing with the team and the work that the team is doing. And so you're a kindergarten teacher, correct?
Yes.
So, Dr. Kaiser, will we be hearing from other teachers in other grades? Because kindergarten is so important, and it's the beginning of everything. And I understand. Are we going to hear from other grades?
If you would like to, we can certainly cue somebody else up.
Well, I so appreciate hearing about the committee, hearing about the schedule for elementary, and hearing your enthusiasm. That's really important. I want to make sure that everyone out there understands that we have this enthusiasm and this passion and this focus for all grades. So I just want to make sure that message gets out. If you think that someone else should also be queued up, then by all means. Otherwise, I want to make sure that message is out there.
If the board wishes, we're happy to do that. And I need to let you know also that Caroline has been serving on our task force. And, you know, in leading the task force, you never know when you get a group of individuals together that are now a group and they're taking on a singular identity as this group. You never know how long it's going to take for the group to gel and to come to consensus. And I have to say, this has been the easiest group that I've ever led because they've all come to the table. It doesn't matter what grade they're representing, with the same passion that Caroline has. And it just humbles me to know that this is the quality of the teaching staff in Monrovia Unified School District, and I am so proud of them.
That's so important, Dr. Kaiser. Thank you so much for sharing that, because that's what we all want to hear. We know, but sometimes we just have to say it. So thank you for that.
We have to say it frequently and often. The other thing that I want to let you know in terms of instructional minutes, this schedule represents for our primary children 200 minutes a day. With the independent learning, and then on Fridays it's 155 minutes. And we have our kindergarten and TK students on the same schedule during the regular year as we do for our primary students, first through third grade in Monrovia, because we offer full day kindergarten. The required kindergarten minutes during regular times is also less, but a Board of Education can make a decision to have a full day kindergarten, and we have been following those schedules ever since I've been in Monrovia. Any other questions about the elementary schedule? Okay.
Thank you, Caroline. Appreciate it.
Okay, next slide. And we will be turning this over to Dr. Jackson, who will talk through our secondary schedule.
Board President Hammond, members of the board, Dr. Tarosin, members of the community. I had the opportunity a week or so ago to present the secondary schedule, so I wanted to bring forward just some specific updates. And as Board Member Lockerbie requested, the secondary can also queue up some secondary teachers to provide some insight. They played a pivotal role in developing this secondary schedule. I didn't mention some of those members last time around, but they are comprised of special ed teachers, science, social science teachers, math, and they were representative of elective classes as well. So very representative group on the subcommittee. And I think I mentioned last time there are over 24 members on that particular group. So today, before you on this particular slide for grades 6 through 12, this represents the instructional minutes that the secondary group has met the particular requirements set forward by the state. I've broken them down specifically by the day. So you will see in the ensuing slides the specific schedule, but this just gives you the overall outlook. So on Mondays, we have a 60-minute session focused on social emotional learning component, and Dr. Kaiser recently described those aspects for you. And this is within the live instructional minutes section. Tuesday through Friday, again, periods 1 through 5 or 0, 2, 4, and 6, totaling 180 live minutes in the morning time. And then in the afternoon, there's an additional opportunity for some live instruction, minimum of 90 minutes, and you'll see that in the one of the ensuing slides as well. So intervention, tutorials, or office hours. The project-based independent instructional minutes, whereby that would be comprised of recorded lessons, videos, small group work, independent work, and projects. On Monday, 240, but then Tuesdays and Thursdays, realizing about 120 minutes in the afternoon. Next.
Oh, I had a question on the previous slide, Ms. Huff, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
And Doctor, if you don't mind me asking, can you give us an example of what is meant by project-based learning?
So if you think of maybe in the middle school, or it could have been at the elementary school level, if somebody was doing a project on the missions, if you will, then, creating a replication, of a mission up and down the coast of California would be one aspect of a project, that could have been done independently, or in some case, it could have been done in a group.
Great, thank you. I'm sorry, while we're on the slide, I have one more question. Thank you. When you're talking about social emotional learning, the secondary level, I think I recall that Dr. Kaiser had mentioned that you have a curriculum for social emotional learning for the teachers. Was I correct?
You are correct.
Okay, so I'm assuming there is also a curriculum for social emotional learning at the secondary level.
Yes, there's a curriculum, actually, TK-12.
Okay.
Dr. Catherine Rial and one of our teachers who's been trained as well, Nicole Burgess, has already started developing the lessons for delivery, starting on, in this case, the first Monday. And at the secondary level, the initial lessons are focusing on just developing social skills, coping skills, anti-bullying lessons, specifically targeted online. We're in an online world, and we want to ensure students know appropriate interactions online.
Great.
Those are actually the first three lessons, Board Member Lockerbie, for the first 3 Mondays that are already planned. And teachers will be participating in that training. But I'd also like to say that it's not just for teachers. It's an all hands on deck methodology. We know that kids connect to individuals other than teachers. We have, I think, a valuable set of paraprofessionals on campus. I think it was 2 years ago where we received the Golden Bell in support of students, and it was one of our custodians who actually led that charge for that particular program. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So this slide just gives you a specific breakdown on what a class period would look like, whether it's on Monday, that's specific block for the social emotional learning support period. It can range for the direct instruction component, 20 to 25 minutes of a check-in, and then transitioning to another 20 or 25 minutes of project-based independent instruction, or kids working in the small groups as well. And then the teacher being able to break out and just check in on individual progress of particular students. And that's the one thing that we will specifically be focusing on with our staff members, just being able to identify the various behaviors that students may be exhibiting that the teacher or the staff member is not necessarily going to try to address, but at least may be able to make a recommendation to another service provider that could be able to come in and support the student and the family. And then in the final 10 to 20 minutes on that Monday, a check-in, closure, and then potentially leaving students with some follow-up work for the remainder of the week. And then knowing that in our Tuesday through Friday overall schedule, there's opportunities again to have check-ins from our counselors, our school psychologists, and other service providers. The Tuesday through Friday class periods, somewhat similar, 20 to 30 minutes of initial check-in and that live demonstration and instruction, followed by approximately 10 to 20 minutes of some group work and independent work, teachers checking in on student progress, and then closure in that final 10 to 20 minutes of the classroom. Specifically on the Thursday, Friday classes, this will be another great opportunity, just based on the feedback we received from students and parents in preparation for that Monday stint, for teachers to be able to provide some initial connections to the work or initial introductions to the work that they may be working on in that independent instruction or that project-based learning.
Can I ask for clarification on that? I have clarification on two things. Does that mean Friday kids could possibly get next week's assignments or beginning of the assignments or something like that to allow parents to work with students over the weekend when they might not be at work?
This was one of the, so yes, Board Member Lockerbie, this is one of the, some of the feedback that was received just in the surveys, and then just some of the comments that we received as well. It would be nice for teachers to be able to provide that information instead of waiting until a Sunday evening. We definitely know that students need a break, but at the same time, to provide an opportunity for parents and students to get ahead, this was the opportunity that we wanted to take.
Okay. The second piece of clarification I wanted is, you haven't mentioned it, but I see it clearly on this slide in both boxes, formative assessment. Now, formative assessments are tests or quizzes. Is that correct?
Yes, they are.
Okay. So I want to be clear about that because that's kind of edubabble, and I want to make sure that non-educators understand that that's out there, so that teachers will be doing formative assessments, which are tests and quizzes.
Yes. Thank you for highlighting that aspect.
And then, so the Tuesday through Friday class periods, this is a breakdown of what the time would be for each period. So 0 through 6 period, each period individually will look something like this.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next slide. So this slide, the Monday Wellness slide, just gives you again another visual in a different manner. I don't want to spend too much time on it, other than again to just highlight in that 9 to 10 o'clock hour. There's that live instruction, and then the project-based independent learning, again, just highlighting the fact that teachers would have had an opportunity to set the stage for that time frame from those Thursday and Friday classes. Next. And then finally, the Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, starting the day for some students. I believe we have over 300 students in the early college program, whether it's students from MHS, Canyon, Oaks, in partnership with Citrus. And I believe it was Board Member Lockerbie who raised the question at the last board meeting, how would those students receive their breakfast? We've been working with the Food Services Department and Mrs. Connie Wu, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, to come up with a time frame so that those students would have access. And so we either will be extending the period either on the front end. We originally had said somewhere between 7:30 and 9 o'clock, but it looks like we're in the final processes of deciding if it is 7 to 11:30 or is it 7:30 to 12. Either way, whichever direction we decide to go, as we move into the school year, we will be doing daily and weekly assessments of how that's working for students, and then being able to make that change. I think one of the things that we're seeing even right now during the summertime, we have a steady flow of community members picking up breakfast and lunch. And so we're able to, in real time, take that feedback and to be able to make those adjustments to fit the needs of the community. Questions on this particular slide? I did again wanted to just highlight that you see in that afternoon, we intentionally provided some additional live instruction time through the intervention tutorials and office hours. The sites, depending on students' needs, will be able to decide what those blocks look like and what subjects are being offered on those particular days.
I have a question.
Okay.
So where it's at 9 to 10, period 1/2. That means it's 9 to 10, Tuesday, Thursday. Tuesday, Thursday is period 1. Yes. Wednesday, Friday is period 2.
Correct.
Okay. And then et cetera through the rest of the day.
Yes. So 135 represented that Monday schedule. I mean, the Tuesday, Thursday schedule, sorry. And then you had the 2, 4, and 6, along with 0 period. Next, the one thing I wanted to highlight here that's not reflected on this schedule, Mountain Park hosts our independent study program that services TK through 12 students. This program has run for many years in the district. It's a program that provides that flexible schedule for the week. And I think we've heard parents seeking a flexible schedule, a program that can be personalized to the needs of the family. Specifically, if you have 2 parents that are essential workers or what have you and don't have the flexibility in their schedule to meet the rigors of the specific schedules that we provided thus far. It provides flexibility for the day or days a student is available to meet with the teacher, and then the specific time frame over the course of the week. Many of our board members who've sat on the board for many of years know that we've had very successful students come out of this program, whether it was going on to the military, transitioning to college, or matriculating into the workforce. And I would encourage parents to reach out to our Director of Alternative Programs, Mr. Flint Burdick, to be able to provide some detailed insight into the particular details of this alternative program. Next slide. Dr. Kaiser.
I'll take it. We've had a subcommittee meeting.
Sue, if you can, you need to turn some light on.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Here we go. We've had a subcommittee that has been meeting specifically to discuss the needs of the dual immersion schools and the students in those dual immersion programs. And it's had a very nice balance of parents, teachers, and administrators. They've looked at what are the best practices instructionally in distance learning for these students in the Spanish and the Mandarin program, considering a 90-10 model and a 50-50 model. And on the scheduling committee, we had one of the teachers that teaches the English counterpart in the Mandarin program, who was very protective of the interest of those teachers in terms of time that teachers need to be able to model and to have students produce the language that they're learning. Frequently in our programs, children are learning languages that parents don't know. And so it is really incumbent upon them having that time for the language production with their teacher. So that was a very large part of the discussion that they had. How much time is it going to take? And there were parents on the panel that were very, very interested in making sure that their children had adequate time with those language teachers to keep the language at the level that they would have biliteracy by the time they reach high school. They're also very concerned about the COVID slide that may have happened in the spring, and they will be doing some baseline testing in the fall with all of their children to see exactly where they are so they can do some catch up where it's needed and also do some intervention where it's needed. So they had 4 guiding goals. They were looking at what is the consistency and the structure that they need to make sure that the developing minds and brains of these students were adequately grabbing the language, making sure that the rigor in the academics in the target language, but also in English, were being addressed. The engagement, just like Caroline talked about the engagement of kindergarten children, engagement is very important to the teachers, and it was expressed very vigorously on this subcommittee. And then having time to be able to connect and support families. So that time in the afternoon, the time in the morning, so that they had time to make those connections. And so here was the breakdown of the teachers. There are 11 teachers from Plymouth, 22 teachers from Monroe. We have 2 teachers at Wild Rose that they have been attending the conference that the board approved at our last meeting. And so they're getting ready to launch in and to do this work in earnest. Any questions?
Celine?
I have a question. Thank you. Since we just previously talked about Mountain Park, for parents that are looking for some flexibility or a different situation at Mountain Park who want to continue to have their children in one of the dual immersion programs, will that be available at Mountain Park?
To tell you the truth, that isn't a situation that has been discussed. And so that's one that we will need to get back to you on. And thinking about the Mountain Park situation where it's primarily packets and they meet with a teacher 1 day a week, I believe the subcommittee would really encourage parents to keep their child in some kind of a schedule with the teachers so that they can have that language
back and forth.
Right.
If you could follow up on that so that we can answer that question if parents have it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next we'll hear from Dr. Jackson, who is the cabinet member that oversees special education.
Board President Hammond, members of the board, Dr. Tarosi, and members of the community. I've had an opportunity to work with our Director of Special Education as she was representative on the secondary scheduling subcommittee, as mentioned prior to, as well as some of our special education teachers. From there, we created specifically a special education task force committee, as they were able to see what the overall structure was that was being developed. And now their initial conversations focused on the internal logistics of being able to support our special needs population. They've taken into consideration feedback from 10 parent meetings, the parent surveys that were specifically targeted for special needs students. And then just most recently today, 2 live webinars were held where over 200 parents attended and were allowed to provide input into creating that structure. The next steps, Jen Johnson, who's the Director of Special Education, will be seeking to add additional stakeholders to the task force to assist with the development of the structure. And she's optimistic that within the next week and a half or so, that they should have the structures tied down. They had some they experienced some significant success over the course of this summer, and are seeking to refine the processes that they put in place during that time frame.
And Darvin, before you move on, the two seminars yesterday, one at 11 o'clock in the morning, the other at 5 in the evening, was extremely well attended. I'd like to thank our staff, from Director Johnson to everybody that works in that special ed. You really had a feeling for the depth of which they are experts in this field. I encourage every parent who has a special needs child to, if you missed that webinar, to catch it, and we're going to be putting it on our website so that you can watch that in its entirety. There is a plethora of information that is critical for each and every one of our special ed parents, and I've encouraged you to do that. And once again, I'd like to thank our staff. They did a fantastic job, and I know the rest of the board members were there as well, and it was critical information.
Thank you. I believe our Chief Technology Officer, Weather, will be previewing the next topic here with registration.
Yes. So I had the privilege of being able to sit in the enrollment registration committee. We've met a few times. The goal is basically to try to figure out how to streamline registrations, one of which we'll be bringing to the board later on tonight. The ability to e-sign documents instead of coming in person to be able to hand the packets. We also looked at things such as how to do free and reduced lunch and just the many different forms that were out there. Then the health coordinator, I believe that's, any questions with that one?
Okay, I'm coming back on for the COVID-19 task force that is required of all districts to be comprised of district office administrators, site administrators, and staff. We are in the process of creating the exposure management plan. So specifically focusing on what happens when an individual tests positive or is determined to be a close contact. We are following the guidelines of the county health department. Once we have those in place, we will be disseminating that information to all individuals, whether staff members, parents, and or students. We're in the process of developing the health screening for individuals prior to them entering sites. We do have the option of taking temperatures and or requiring individuals to complete a survey prior to. We're in the final stages of using actually a QR code where people could scan and utilize that on their phone, answer the 4 questions, and then be able to have that populate into our system where either the site and or our district nurse would be able to see those particular individuals that are coming into our site. If they did not have access to electronics, we will also have paper copies available. And finally, in the final steps of developing our planning for cleaning and disinfecting, whether it's the high traffic areas throughout the course of the day and or the nightly cleaning protocols. Next slide. Dr. Kaiser.
Good evening. One of our task forces has been the Professional Development and Planning Task Force. And again, we have a group of people that are representative of parents, teachers, support staff, and administrators. The areas that we have explored have been social emotional learning, which includes the anti-bias training and trauma-informed instruction. And overseeing this wing of our professional development plan is Dr. Catherine Rial out of her office. And when we're looking at the social emotional learning curriculum and the consistency that we want to have across our sites, TK through 12th grade, this is something that she is working on in terms of setting up training for all of our staff. And inclusive in that training will be specifically anti-bias training and trauma-informed instruction as we move through the year. And you can see that these components are being threaded right into our schedule, and we continue our staff so that these lessons are delivered with intentionality and the way that they are written, the way that they're intended to be delivered. The area of academic content is something that we keep on the front burner all year, always. And even though we're in this COVID-19 environment, we will continue to work with our teachers in the areas of content, their content areas, and that is led by Courtney Glass, who is the Director of Curriculum and Instruction. Then in the area of educational technology, we have our instructional specialists, Chad Miller and Jennifer Malgin, who are working on a technology plan for the entire year and an educational technology plan. But this summer, beginning with our professional development day in the summer, they are preparing right now 4 modules, one in Google Classroom, one in Parent Square, one for Zoom, and one for Nearpod, that every teacher in our district will go through and participate in, so that we have 100% of our teaching staff and our administrators ready to utilize these 4 consistent products, so that we're not bombarding our parents with a bazillion different pieces. But the things that they can count on is that instruction will be delivered through Google Classroom. Any communication that comes from the district office, or that comes from the principal, or that comes from the teacher to the whole classroom, will come through Parent Square. And in order to make that happen, teachers and staff all need to be trained in these. So Jen Malgin and Chad Miller are handling these pieces. And then we have our professional learning communities that we started in many years ago, but in earnest a year ago in the summer, when we took all of our administrators to a very wonderful training where this was laid out as a very consistent plan for our staff. We're continuing in that learning, and even this summer, our administrators attended very many webinars that were delivered for free this summer. And even through the Solution Tree, they gave these marvelous webinars, and we attended many of them together, so that we had a communal piece of information, so that we can all speak the same language. And that training is continued. We have a group of administrators and teachers in the district that we call the planning and writing team, and a presenting and writing team. And they conduct this learning for our administrators and our leadership teams, which goes back into the school sites, helping our teachers work together collaboratively on things such as knowing what is essential for the learning, knowing how to manage common formative assessments, and even in this digital environment, how do we assess kids? How do we know where they are? And then knowing when kids need to have some intervention, or when do they need to have some extensions in their learning. And also keeping our eye heavily in that area of student achievement. This section is led by Mr. Kirk McGinnis, our high school principal. He is the lead in the writing and presenting team. So the professional development and planning team is very busy. This group will continue working, I believe, throughout the year, because the pieces have evolved. And while these are very much a similar menu that we would be working on anyway, we have got to always bring this under the lens of what the student experience is, what the parent experience is, in these digital times that we're in. So that's the professional development and planning team.
Maritza has a question.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Kaiser. I'm really happy to see the modules that will be pushed out starting August 10th. And you might question why we're focusing on a Zoom. You know, we've been using Zoom since the spring. But one thing we want to point out is this is a different Zoom package that the board approved a couple of weeks ago. And this Zoom package has a lot more features than your free version that you may have been using in the past. So there will be breakout rooms and specific safeguards put in place, how to use the waiting room, how to use breakout rooms and things like that. So that's why it's requiring some training so that our teachers are fully knowledgeable on how to use this new platform. Same thing with Parent Square. There's a lot of features on Parent Square. Without having this training and this module, we may be missing out, or teachers may be missing out on those features or the functionality of Parent Square. So I'm really happy to see that we're providing that training in the background. And I'm really happy that we're using Parent Square as a district. And this is going to be the one platform that parents will get used to using, whether their child moves from one grade to another, from one school site to another. It's going to be consistent and uniform for the district. So just wanted to express that.
Thank you. Okay. And that's it for professional development and planning. Next slide. Oh, we have a couple more features. Yes. We realize that our teachers need to have extra preparation time. Getting ready for school is always a big job. And this year it's a doubly big job because we're having to figure things out. Nothing is automatic right now. And so what we are looking at in terms of recommendations, we're recommending that we move one of our professional development days from March to August 17th to give our teachers some more preparation time in some structured time with their principal and other teachers. And then we are recommending that we give each one of our teachers 10 hours of flexible planning time, but between now and August 31st, and 6 hours for special education aides to prepare for the beginning of the year. The funding source that would pay for this is our Learning Loss Mitigation Fund, which we have been given because of COVID. So it's not general fund or any of our categoricals. And we're recommending that we do this, and the cost to this fund would be $100,000. This fund is quite large, and we have only until December 31st to expend the fund. Next slide.
Really quick, how much money is in that fund?
Connie will have to tell us. I've heard two different figures. It's well in excess of $1 million. And I've heard the figure 1.5, and I've also heard the figure 4 million. So we'll need to get that from the CBO because I've heard two different numbers. It's a very large number. So this is just a small portion of that learning mitigation fund. And it may only be spent on technology, professional development, interventions for students that are exhibiting a learning gap. So this piece of the COVID money has a specific role within the school district, and that's to close the gaps in learning.
Will Connie be speaking on this fund later?
Not today, because we're trying to get better guidance from the LA County Office of Education to make sure that we have our numbers straight, which is why we're not prepared yet to discuss it. And what we intend to do once we finalize that number is develop a cohesive plan through which we would target the assistance of our students to make sure that we are providing that which it intends to mitigate the loss of learning for our students.
If she can put together a spreadsheet that shows all of the external funds as they pertain to the COVID and what we've actually spent and what are planning to spend, that would be great.
Absolutely. We intend to do that and present it to the board for not just review, but approval.
Thank you.
And Sue, did you have one more thing to say?
No.
Okay. One of the things he was quiet the whole time. So, as you know, things are difficult to pin down. Information changes from day or week at a time. The amount of money we have is not quite clear at every point. We have a pretty good sense, but things change and we adjust as a result. I just since last week, when I provided some information about the waivers for elementary schools, this week, just a couple of days ago, we received this guidance from the LA County office, the Department of Public Health, saying that waivers will not be even considered at this time. And just as a point of reference, I had not considered pursuing this until we had our distance learning plan in place and much of the work of the subcommittees concluded in terms of distance learning and our COVID-19 mitigation. So there's a great deal of work to do for us to prepare for something like this when it becomes available. But this is the goal. Our goal is to slowly reopen safely. Next slide, please. Next steps. What we have heard loud and clear is that it is difficult to work and monitor your children or find somebody to watch your children. I was fortunate. My grandparents watched me. Both my parents worked, but they weren't English speakers. They couldn't help me with my homework. And God forbid I brought to them a computer and asked them to help me set it up. I would not have gotten the help I needed. So we understand the need for some sort of support to parents so that their children are supervised during instructional hours. And I've learned of different districts pursuing different avenues, and we will be doing the same. There are things that we need to do in order to pursue that. The first is to determine our capacity. It doesn't make sense to open up our schools widely. And I mean, at some point, there has to be some guidance about how we open and open safely. The second is making sure that we have safety and sanitation protocols in place, an exposure management plan. This is probably the single most important thing we need to do because it's about the communication to our parents and to our staff when an exposure is in place. Excuse me, just one moment. This is...
I thought you were a ventriloquist. Brian, you're on.
Maybe this is a good time to go over exactly what a learning pod is and just the big picture instead of just jumping into the steps.
Thank you. It is the supervision of students during instructional hours. It is not a classroom. It is not for direct teaching. It is simply that there is a responsible adult supervising children who would likely be able to assist with connecting to some of the technology, but not necessarily a tutoring opportunity. And it is, it would be, let's say, a stationary place where students go to the same desk. Nobody else uses that desk. A device, a Chromebook, headsets, instructional materials that remain in that classroom throughout the time they're there. Nobody else using that desk or that space. Students might be in a classroom, maybe 10 or 12 at a time, with social distance, 6 feet between them, wearing masks, and following all the safety guidelines that we have been provided through the Department of Public Health. This is a place for supervising students. It is not a place of teaching students. Let's see. And of course, we need to ensure that not just social distancing, but that we have identified additional entry points for our whoever arrives, so that there is no congestion. We want to avoid that kind of congestion. So this is something we realize children need supervision during the day, especially when parents work, and are trying to find ways through which to do that so that we can meet that need. There's much in place, however, before we get to this point. And if parents are watching, please know that we will be investigating and identifying each one of these and finalizing these plans, determining what we have, and putting our supplies in place, setting up classrooms. But we will not be ready on August 19th.
Well, I want to clarify something.
Yes.
This isn't what, as I understand this is, we're going to explore this as an option.
Right.
We're not saying right now, we are implementing this.
Right.
All you are saying right now to us and to the public is, this is something that we have heard about, that we are going to investigate, and we will let you know more later. Correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. I want to make sure that that's clear.
I don't want anybody to think that on August 19th, we will be opening our doors.
Well, and I would hate for someone to think that on November 1st, we're going to be opening our doors. This is something we need to look at very closely, and what the rules are and how we might implement it. But I sure don't want anybody counting on this aspect of it to go forward. Other than it's worth looking into, and if we can do it, it's something we're interested in doing if we can manage to do it. Right?
Exactly. And I will continue to provide updates about the information that we receive, and whether it's about our internal or externally. Okay. Next slide, please. You know, the information we asked parents for in those surveys is really the information we continue to use to guide our decisions and identify our needs. We had approximately 500, 600 parents who, from the, let's see, 50% of the parents who returned surveys, of them, about 600 said that they would need childcare in whatever scenario. And we understand that need as well. So 500 regardless, and an additional 170 or so, depending upon the model. So again, we're using the information solicited from parents to help us with our next steps. Next slide, please. We have some more next steps to take. As we will be entirely online, we're reviewing our acceptable use policies for our students and our staff. You know, we have, what is it that we need to, is there anything we need to change when look when checking out technology or using the technology and the platform. We have moved into an entirely virtual platform, and so we want to make sure that we have all of the assurances and provide all of the acceptable and unacceptable applications of it. We want to make sure to establish a feedback loop with staff, with students, with parents about how we're doing in this distance learning model so that we can refine our practices. We want to make sure to streamline our communication and provide consistent communication on a regular basis, district-wide. We will need to update some appropriate board policies, and you'll start seeing some of those coming your way about remote learning or about COVID-19 mitigation. And we will be preparing our learning continuity and attendance plan. This is something that is required for us to submit by the end of September. So we have a bit of work to do, and we are moving through that list of items and prioritizing our needs. And by our needs, let me clarify, the needs of our students. Next, yes.
Real quick, before we get too far away from the learning pod, there's one thing that I just wanted to make sure was clear, and that is this is an optional thing for parents. What we're trying to do is find some solutions for parents that don't have the ability to supervise their kids during the day because they have to work or for whatever other reasons. If we're able to put something like this together, we are not mandating that you send your kids here. This is something that is totally optional to the parents to give them some flexibility in their schedules, but it's an individual choice by each family whether they would want to participate in this or not. I just want to make sure that's clear.
Yes, thank you. Next slide.
I have a question on this slide, if I may.
Of course.
When you're talking about, since you are here talking about streamlining communication, I know that we have recently implemented Parent Square to help streamline that communication. And I also want us to consider the communication that we have with the community that doesn't necessarily have a student in the district, but has a relationship with the district or with any of the schools within the district. Does Parent Square reach out to those people in the community that have a relationship with our schools?
My understanding is that we can sign a community member up for Parent Square and incorporate them in that community link and send out our updates in that manner. And so you do not have to have a child to receive the communication we send out through Parent Square. Typically, excuse me, I'm sorry.
No, pardon me, go ahead.
What we have done is we had a database of emails and we migrated those over to Parent Square to ensure that streamlined communication so that we did not lose anyone. However, we can keep adding those email addresses to Parent Square.
And how would someone get added to that communication list?
They can contact the superintendent's office and we'd be happy to add them.
Great, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. And I'm glad you asked to pause on this slide, mostly because it's the last one, and also because it allows me a chance to clarify that these are some of our next steps. There are many things that we are going to continue doing, many details we will refine, but we wanted to make sure to provide you with a list of these priorities, the big ticket items we see coming soon. Are there any questions about this or any of the other topics that we provided and discussed?
One comment. Thank you very much, Kathy, for the very thorough update. I know that our staff has been working diligently for a long time to get us to this point here. And there has been a tremendous amount of work. And speaking about it takes time. And I know the public who is watching has now spent the better part of close to an hour and a half being updated on what is going on. This is the amount of work that is going on in the district to prepare for August the 19th. And no, it did not start 2 weeks ago. It did start when we, the board, said let's concentrate on going online 100%. But before that time, there was a hybrid model that we'd been working on. And we're going to have to use that hybrid model at some point. So it won't be wasted time. And I want also people to consider that in the educational field, when school got out on June, I forget the date now. 3rd, thank you. Most people in the education profession then go on they're on summer break. And so they're not here to be a part of all this. Yet a tremendous amount of people who work in our district did come back and work and spend time to develop what it is that you're seeing today. So it wasn't a plan that was started out 3 weeks ago. This has been a plan that's been worked on for quite some time. It is just a very, very large process to get through. So thank you, Kathy, and thank your staff very much.
Thank you. And from that, we can go to our action items.
Up next, we have a professional development and planning, and who is going to get the staff report?
You know, each of the next few items are items that have been incorporated within the presentation. And if you'd like, for the sake of, well, actually, Dr. Jackson has probably the most updated information, and it'd be remiss if I didn't provide him with the opportunity to present this.
Okay, so Dr. Jackson, you're up.
Okay, the Board of Education is requested to approve an optional change of a professional development day for certificated staff. Dr. Kaiser provided some insight as to the rationale, but as previously approved, the 2021 school year will begin with remote instruction and distance learning. Monrovia's commitment to high quality teaching and learning will continue. The Monrovia Unified District will allow certificated staff the flexibility, so this is optional, of switching the March 6, 2021 regular schedule PD by attending and collaborating in additional teacher professional development on Monday, August 17, 2020. And as it is optional, there's no budget impact.
The only thing I think we need to just do is that is action item number 3 that he just gave a staff report on.
Wondering about that.
Yes.
So we're just gonna take it out of turn, since that was a very nice, succinct presentation. Does anybody have any questions of Dr. Jackson? Entertain a motion.
I'm muted. Hang on. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
So this was action item 3, the optional change. And this is the one, the option of moving a March PD day to the beginning of school. Is that this one? Okay.
Sure.
And it's optional. So we've already got that that professional development day scheduled in March. So if they choose to take the opportunity for an additional day of training before school starts, they may do that. And if they choose not to, and then that means that that March day they would have off.
Correct.
And if they choose not to, then they would be doing professional development on that day in March.
Correct.
Okay.
Any more questions? Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Huff, may we please have a vote?
Board Member Gilliland,
Yes.
Board Member Lockerbie,
Yes.
Board Member Travanti,
Maritza, you're muted.
Sorry, yes.
Board Member Wong,
Yes.
Board President Hammond.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, we'll go back to action item number 1 of professional development and planning. Is that you as well, Dr. Jackson?
I believe that is Dr. Kaiser.
Okay, Dr. Kaiser.
Good evening, Board President Hammond and Board. The Board of Education is requested to approve the allocation of up to 10 hours of additional professional development and planning time for teachers and up to 6 hours of special education instructional aid training until August 31st, 2020. And this is the concept that we were talking about in the professional development discussion. And so the rationale is that in alignment with the district's goal to promote professional learning and to equip our teachers to learn the technologies and strategies pertaining to distance learning platforms, we have a need to offer professional development time and assistance to our teachers. And so it will be up to 10 hours. They need to have this completed by August 31st. If a teacher were to do 5 hours, they would submit those hours. And so this is flexible, and all of our specialists will be available to assist them with their professional development. The teachers will be paid $27 an hour plus benefits for the 10 hours. And the 113 instructional aides will have an hourly rate of $20.36 and $22.50 plus benefits for these 6 hours. The professional development will be paid for with the CARES Act funding.
Any questions of Sue?
I have some questions. So this is, they can take it at any point up until August 31st. So they don't have to have training during their planning time or during their prep time or something that's inconvenient like that. This is, they can put it anywhere.
Yes, in fact,
within reason.
They may not count hours that are during their planning time or their prep time because those hours are already paid for. And so these hours can be executed during these summer weeks before school starts that they're not paid, or they can do them in the evening, or they can do them on the weekends. We have a lot of videotaped content that we will be opening a library for them that they can view. They can also, under the direction of their principal, work in their professional learning communities to do activities in order to get ready for school.
Now, will teachers have access to this new curricula that, for instance, the social emotional curriculum that is being introduced? Will they have access to that during this professional development and planning time so that they can familiarize themselves with new curricula?
Unfortunately, those new curriculum pieces are being ordered. They will be ordered in the next few weeks. And so those pieces will be in before August 31st. And so they can familiarize themselves during those weeks. But before school starts, we're going to be in a bit of a pinch, and they'll be starting with some other lessons. We already do have the Olveus curriculum that they have been using that's not new for our teachers in kindergarten through grade 8. Those lessons have been in play for the last couple of years. It was through a grant that we had with the Betty Ford Foundation.
Just for clarification, so that the public understands, our teachers are not to report to work until August the 18th. That is the very first day that our teachers and administrators, our teachers report to work en masse. So what we're talking about is paying people to come in while they're still not on the clock to learn about the environment that we're in to
Right.
help them get a head start for the 18th.
Right. That is very true. And, you know, the other thing that's been happening, I've talked to so many of our administrators over the last 2 weeks that have reported to me that they've been having meetings with their teachers. And so while the teachers are not, their first day of pay is August 18th, these teachers have been coming and preparing. And so in light of the dedication of the teachers in Monrovia, this is to help them to continue that through this first month that is so critical to get things set up. And so that's exactly what this is. They may not claim time that they're already being paid for, so it has to be outside of their 7.25-hour workday once they do come back. So if they don't finish by the time school starts and they're using time after school starts, it has to be outside of the school day.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Hupley, please call the roll.
Board Member Lockerbie,
Yes.
Board Member Travanti,
Yes.
Board Member Wong,
Yes.
Board Member Gilliland,
Yes.
Board President Hammond.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Up next, we have the purchase of student desk guards. Dr. Sharosian?
Yes, President Hammond, members of the board, I think we'd like to, we have some photos that have not been uploaded, I think. Ms. Huff, have the photos been uploaded to this?
No, ma'am.
Okay, we are going to email those to Mr. Puvakin, who will upload them, and we will come back to this item so that everybody sees what it is we are referencing. If we could skip to the next item, Panda Doc, that would be.
Well, the next thing is Charles.
Yeah. It'll give me a chance to email it to him. We just realized it right now.
Okay, so item number 4, software subscription. Charles.
Good evening, President Hammond, board members, cabinet, members of the community. The Board of Education has requested to approve a software subscription with PandaDoc, allowing for the electronic signing of documents for 1 year. PandaDoc will allow us to provide for electronic signatures of the many processes that we have that require a signature. The cost of this would be approximately $43.98 and would be paid out of the CARES Act funding. Is there any questions?
$4,398.
Yes, 4398. Yes.
I have a question, and I apologize, Charles, you might not be able to answer it, but maybe someone can jump in. During the webinar, the special education webinar yesterday, there was a lot of talk about wet signatures that we all understand have to be on special ed documentation. Can this take the place of a wet signature in cases like that?
Yes, it's supposed to be able to take place of a wet signature, because one of the differences with having a software like that is that they sort of kind of pretty much act as an electronic notary. Is that when we send a packet out, when they're signing it, it's attached to their email and it's kept on record with PandaDoc. So this could potentially, now I don't know if there's any other special ed regulations that might prevent it, but for other things, it can be used for in place of a wet ink signature.
And that was my next question. Is the other end of who receives those documents, are they going to accept this?
Well, if they don't, then we'll have to somehow get a way to get their signature, and maybe they have to bring the document in. But I would assume that the majority of folks would rather not come in, that it'll be far and few in between that will probably just really want to bring in a packet.
Charles, can you tell us what the idea behind this is? I mean, do we have specific documents that you are thinking that this is going to be used for?
Yes, it could be used for many different things. We could use it for, like, for example, a technology use agreement. It could be used for some of the documents in the registration packet. We're looking to see if it could be potentially used with also IEPs as well. And it could be used for when we need an employee to sign something, such as contracts, things like that. So we were testing a software out there that we had employees sign a COVID-19 protocol form. So it would be used for things like that.
I think the bottom line is, as Celine was saying, is it going to be valid? I mean, just because we're saying it, that doesn't make it so.
Yeah. So PandaDoc is a company that's in the same realm of those, if you probably heard of DocuSign and Adobe Sign. PandaDoc is basically in that same arena. It's an e-signature software company that complies with there's a bunch of acronyms that I don't remember right now, but they comply with a bunch of acronyms that allow this to happen.
Is Jennifer Johnson on?
No, she's not on right now.
Maybe we could get that, Dr. Therosian, maybe we could get that question answered for our next, in our next update.
Of course.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions? Charles, did you get the pictures yet? Or we need to talk some more?
I can talk more.
Actually, if you don't mind, Ms. Huff can upload the pictures as you vote.
Okay. Any more questions of Charles? Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Ms. Huff, maybe please have a vote.
Board Member Travanti,
Yes.
Board Member Wong,
Yes.
Board Member Gilliland,
Yes.
Board Member Lockerbie,
Yes.
Board President Hammond.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Have they been uploaded yet?
I'm gonna need to stop sharing my screen for 1 second.
Okay, let's just go on to number 5 and we'll come back to that. So take up the matter of the approval of a moratorium on school uniform policy. Dr. Therosian.
Thank you, President Hammond, members of the board. We bring to you this suspension of a board policy that is ordinarily enacted as soon as school begins, and with the idea that while students are online and not on campus during this distance learning process and time through which we are teaching and learning virtually, we'd like to suspend the board policy that would ordinarily be enacted and not require, let's say, PE uniforms and some of the other dress code requirements that the policy for uniforms includes. Of course, the expectation is that appropriate dress is worn on camera at all times.
I have a quick question on that. I know I saw from some of the emails that have gone out from our schools, those who have PE, that there is a PE uniform that you can purchase. If we're suspending this policy and people were to remove that particular cost from whatever the packages that they purchase because you don't need it right now, in anticipation of coming back in a hybrid model where you would need it, would be extending the same price for it because it's no longer part of a package.
Yes, and even now, it is entirely optional. There are some parents who actually requested to be able to buy the PE uniforms just to have that at home, and that's why it's been included in the first place. But we would certainly include the lower price. It doesn't make sense to do otherwise now.
If we suspend the policy and a student appears in class with clothes that would be against this policy, how will we handle that?
I'm not sure I understand.
Okay.
Excuse me, Bob, can I address that?
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, we have school dress policies that address appropriate dress. This only addresses the uniform issue, if I'm correct. Is that right, Dr. Throsian?
This is the entire board policy about appropriate dress with the specific colors, for example, for the shirts or the slacks. It would not affect that part of the board policy that addresses any kind of inappropriate
But
gang wear.
the question I'm asking, I'll just be very specific. If I showed up in class with a T-shirt that had an advertisement for a cigarette company, we would still have the ability to say that is not appropriate. You need to change your shirt.
Correct. The only part of the policy that this would address is the requirement for the specific colors and khakis and uniforms.
Okay. I'm good then. Any other questions?
I'm sorry, I have a question. The way that this is written, do we need to add the part that you said, Dr. Throsian, about appropriate dress is expected and required during distance learning? Do we need to add that? Or is this motion just to suspend our uniform policy?
If I could answer that, Selena, I am prepared with that language for the motion when we get to that point. But yes, point taken with that.
Sorry, I stepped on you. I'm sorry.
No worries at all. I just wanted to say the reason why this is on the agenda is that we recognize the fact and we're sensitive to the fact that some of our families are struggling right now. They are impacted by COVID. So if this is one less expense that they have right now and they can redirect funds to other critical household expenses, then that's why we're making this or considering this evening, not for any other reason, but just hopefully, save some money for some of our families right now in this critical time.
Thank you.
That's it. I didn't have anything else.
Oh, okay. If there's no further questions, entertain a motion.
All right. I'd like to make a motion with this language. While the expectation for school uniforms is being waived while in distance learning, it is important that students follow established dress code guidelines for distance learning, and especially during on-camera engagement. Uniforms would be required at such time when we transition to a hybrid plan during in-person time and when students return to campuses in person full time.
All right, that brings up a question then.
Oh, wait, before we go to the question,
yeah.
We need to either have a second the motion or not.
I will second the motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second and discussion. Ed.
Yes, my question and issue is this. When we go back to a hybrid model or whatever that we put students back in the classroom, if we include that language, it automatically goes into effect. But if we don't, then the board would have the opportunity when we go back to in class to say we want to continue the policy of not requiring or not having uniforms so that our families that are being affected by this economically don't have to buy uniforms. So I wonder if it's wise to say it does go into effect when we come back into the classroom, or leave that decision up until the time that we can come back into the classroom.
I'm good with that. Yeah, we can drop that last line. So
that would be my preference. So there's going to be a lot of families that have been out of work for a very long time if something doesn't change. So
right.
I don't want to impact them if we don't have to.
Maritza, you're willing to have that amendment?
I'm willing to. Did you want me to reread it and drop that line?
I need to ask Selena if she's willing to at the same time because she's second.
I need clarity as to what is being.
Okay, so if you'll reread it, Maritza.
Got it. Okay. I'd like to make a motion with this language. While the expectation for school uniforms is being waived while in distance learning, it is important that students follow established dress code guidelines for distance learning, and especially during on-camera engagement.
Okay.
You're good with that? Okay, so we have a revised motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Ms. Huss, may we please vote?
Board Member Wong,
Yes.
Board Member Gilliland,
Yes.
Board Member Lockerbie,
Yes.
Board Member Travanti,
Yes.
Board President Hammond.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay.
Mr. President, would you allow me to say something? It didn't really affect this motion, but it came up in the discussion, and I just wanted to mention that Foothill Unity Center has been a great force in our community to help out people in our community who are needy. And Foothill Unity Center, I apologize, Foothill Unity Center has uniforms, and the schools have uniforms. Also, I know, there's a community that donates their kids outgrown uniforms. So for people that need it and for people that don't know about it, there are places to reach out. And I only wanted to mention that Foothill Unity and contacting the school because we were talking about it. So thank you.
Good point. So, Dr. Sharoshian, we're back on item number 2. Do you have a picture of you behind a student desk guard?
No.
I have a picture if anybody wants to see it.
We have several different desk guards that, or desk shields that Ms. Wu had looked through, and she has identified one that is the recommended one, and I will turn it over to her. Ms. Wu.
Thank you, Dr. Tarosian. Board President Mr. Hammond, Board of Education, cabinet member, and communities. While the district prepare for the school opening, our students and staff safety is our top priority. So while the district will follow the requirement for the social distance learning in the classroom as well as campus, the students' desk guard will offer additional protective barrier for younger students, remind them of social distance and increase protection among the students. So the district has reached out to various vendors and seeking for the sample, and based on the safety, stability, mobility, flexibility, and storage requirement, and the district pick up the one just the right to my screen is the right hand side one. So I'm not quite sure your screen may be the same as mine. And this one with from all the sample we received, this is more stable and more flexible, and then they have a more strong holding for 3 section. So that's what we recommend for board approval to purchase. The price is increasing the sales tax is $77 per unit, and because of the price is represented its quality and its flexibility. So we right now, based on last year's, we have around 2,500 elementary school level students. So also we were following the CAPCA guideline, because if the purchase is more than $200,000, it will require formal bid. So we request board approval. We think if we purchase around 2,500, the total prices will be lower than $200,000.
Any questions of Connie?
Not of Connie per se, but that seems like an extraordinary expense for a piece of plastic. I mean, this to me is an example of where schools are going to get gouged, in that with a little bit of shopping, I mean, I would love to see if we have some other options in what we can do, but $80 per desk for that. When we have we're going to have tremendous number of expenses coming up and financial issues in the coming days. And I think we might want to be aware of how much money we're spending. $200,000 for this, which may be a one-time event, possibly. Are we looking to affix these to the desks? I mean, they look like there's something that just is freestanding. Is the idea to permanently attach these or not?
My understanding is not, because it will provide more flexibilities.
Okay, I know that the desks in all of the different schools are not uniform in size or shape. So do we even know if this fits on all of the desks?
It fits on the elementary school desk. We tried.
Okay.
The individual desks?
Yeah.
That's correct. Yes, individual desk. And Kathy has a wonderful picture. She can show the board.
You know, Ms. Wu, I know last year we had really started to talk about, and some of the sites had started to move towards, what was it called? Flexible seating?
Yeah, the classroom furniture, it's more in coordinates, group studying, discussion, collaborations. That's correct.
Just to be clear, that has stopped for COVID, correct? So we're not looking at putting plexiglass around a bean bag. When we go back physically, we're going back to traditional desks and chairs, correct?
That's correct. We also, when we come back, if the school starting the hybrid model, we are required the social distance. So desks are 6 feet apart. So yes, right now during COVID-19, we were going to temporary away from the cozy furniture setting.
And I might be able to shed some light. I haven't purchased this particular model. There is a model that I have purchased for our organization, and they cost $75. So it's 75 plus the tax. So Brian, it's probably in line, even if you're going quantity. The question I have, is there any consideration for a secondary use on these? Because we will have a whole lot of plastic left over.
They look so much like the partitions that are used during SBAC, except they're translucent and not opaque. Could we put some paper over them for?
It just, we're going to own, if we pass this, we're going to own an awful lot of plastic. Is there another use that has anybody thought about that when we're through with COVID? Because one day we will be through with COVID, and it just seems odd to.
It's not even if we have a secondary use. It's where are you going to store all of these?
I just need some clarification. Is this a requirement? Is this one of the guidelines that they are requiring in our classrooms when we get back in person, whether that be hybrid and eventually back in person? I mean, I guess I haven't read this particular requirement where we're having to have plexi on all desks in our elementary classrooms. And perhaps I missed it, but I'm just wondering, is this a requirement?
This is not a requirement. It is an option that the board can consider as an additional safety measure because it creates an additional barrier. However, this is COVID specific. I like the idea of using them for testing if we cover them, but for our purposes, this is a one-time kind of use, we would find a storage space. They do fold. They're fairly
Flexible.
Flexible. Yeah, they really are sturdy and flexible. But this is also an item we can table and come back to, because this is not something that we've discussed. Neither have you read about it in other places. It is simply as we prepare for a return to a hybrid model, this is one option to create additional barriers between students.
And this is being considered for the elementary level.
Only.
You know, I guess I look at this and I think to myself, we're not close to coming back to school at this point in time. The chances of additional rules coming from the state or county are pretty good. I would hate to spend the equivalent of a couple teachers' salaries for something that we may not even be able to use because it doesn't meet the requirements that are put upon us. Since we do have some time, it would be my preference to think about this a little bit and whether it's going to meet the needs of our students based on state and local rulings, and to see whether we really need this or not. It's just a big ticket item.
Well, let's just take it and table it, Brian, and get some more information on it.
I'm good with that.
I agree.
Everybody's okay?
I'm very good with that. Yes.
Okay. Then, if there's no further business before this body.
I have a question of Connie before Connie goes away.
Sure.
May I ask?
Sure.
Awesome. Now, I know Brian touched on this very clearly earlier on in the meeting, but I just wanted to be clear. As I understand it, we have 3 pots of money that we have gotten for COVID, for education during COVID. SB 117, learning loss mitigation, and the CARES Act. Am I correct in that?
That's correct.
Okay. So as Brian had mentioned earlier on in this meeting, I would like to know how much is in each of those pots. I think CARES was 910,000. I think learning loss mitigation was 4 million, but it's allocated. So if to add to what Brian said earlier, if very, very simply, if you could let us know how much aid we have received from the state and federal level, how much we have spent, and how much we have left.
Will do.
Thank you so much, Connie. I appreciate you.
No problem.
Okay.
One last comment, President Hammond, is we don't have the next meeting listed on here, and it probably would be good to let the public know when our next meeting is.
Our next regularly scheduled meeting will be a board meeting. It'll be next Wednesday. Forgive me, I don't know the date. It's the 12th?
August 12th.
The 12th.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. And that'll be a regular board meeting. It will not be a special board meeting. Okay.
All board meetings are special.
Well, these are a little bit more special. If there's no further business before this body, we will stand adjourned. Good night, everybody, and thank you very much for tuning in.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
night.